All right, you guys ready to rock and roll?
Yes.
It's Tuesday night, Tuesday, June 21st, 2016, 5 p.m. local time here in beautiful Bali. Thanks you guys for coming out tonight. We're gonna try and make it interesting. If we can't make tonight's show interesting, I don't know, we might as well just give up. It's been like the soap opera, you know, the adventure novel we're all used to seeing week in and week out. We've had the most death-defying plot twists ever, and we're gonna try and take you on a little ride, let you know what's been going on. For those of you who haven't paid close enough attention, we're gonna do a little recap and explain things. But the title of today's show is "Every Little Thing is Gonna Be All Right," because there's a lot of hotheads. There's a lot of very upset people, lots of red faces, lots of flame wars on Twitter and on Reddit. And I think it's time to just chill. Everything's going to be okay. No one's going to die. So every little thing's going to be all right is the name of the game tonight. We're going to try and do some other things besides all the crazy soap opera stuff. We're going to go around the world. We're going to visit Venezuela, some sad things going on. Welcome, guys. Some sad things going on in Venezuela. Also, Nigeria. Have you guys seen the news from Nigeria in the last 24 hours? Oh, stick around for that. This is very interesting stuff in Africa. We're also going to visit the IMF. The IMF knows what a Bitcoin is, turns out. Yes, they know about Bitcoin. I suppose we should all gird our loins at that fact. And then we're going to, of course, get into Ethereum and the DAO and the latest events that have been going on. So let's kick things off. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for the folks at home. I'm on the wrong tab here.
That'd be monkeys.
Yes, monkey. The show must go on, JP. Yeah. Monkeys or no monkeys. Hey, Professor.
Hey.
Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, let me just get my act together here. All right, so episode number 90 of The Filter. Every little thing's going to be all right. Let's hope so, at least for the next hour or so. Okay, we are coming to you live from hubud.org. These guys give us a nice, cool conference room to meet in every week and have been a real supporter of what we're trying to do here, building a Bitcoin economy in Ubud, Bali. These guys, I don't think it would have happened if it wasn't for Ubud. This is quite a special place. So if you find yourself in Bali on a Tuesday night, hopefully you'll join us in person at Ubud. It's a great place to be. We also have this bitcoinsinbali.org website. I've got a little bit of an announcement to make, folks. We, on the Saturday, July 16th, we are going to have our first Bitcoin 101 in Bahasa, Indonesia.
I'm standing.
Yes.
Yay.
All right. Send us your Indonesian language speakers and Bitcoin curious native Indonesians.
Oh, there's Bit Curious.
This is
Who's facilitating? Is that Bitcoin Indonesia?
Yes. I've collaborated with the folks at bitcoin.co.id and Bitcoin Indonesia, and they're going to make it their own, right? They've been to our Bitcoin 101, but they are going to do their own thing, which is totally appropriate. That happens July 16th, right here in this room. I'll be traveling, but things are going to be happening while I'm gone. So. The details will be on this bitcoinsinbali.org site and on the Facebook group. Facebook group? What about this Facebook group? We just went over 900 members here, guys. We're hitting the big time. 900 people are a part of the Bitcoins in Bali group. This is where we have our conversation when we're not hanging out together. We crowdsource the latest news about what we've been talking about. And you too can submit a story, and we can talk about it when we get together on a Tuesday night. As I'm scrolling through here, you're going to see some of those stories come up later. And this is where we collaborate when we're not hanging out together. We've also got Twitter, hashtag Bitcoins in Bali. It's a hashtag that's just sweeping the nation, taking over everything. There's at least one post a week with hashtag Bitcoins in Bali, but we're trying to make it a thing. I'm going to add to add to the Bitcoins in Bali hashtag by letting people know that we are meeting right now. All right, let's talk about a little local news. How many of you people were aware that I did an interview with this guy, Griff Green, a few days ago on the 18th?
Yes.
Yes. There was something that happened with the DAO, and within 24 hours, our man Griff Green reached out and wanted to talk about the entire sequence of events from his perspective. And we pulled it together on, I think, at 7 o'clock in the evening, and did a little bit of promotion. But there were so many people that were thirsty for information about this thing that was happening with the DAO. How many people don't know what I'm talking about when I say the recent stuff happening with the DAO? Is everyone in the room familiar with okay, so I don't need to go into too much detail, but Griff Green is the community manager for Slockit and the de facto community manager for the DAO. It was the Slockit team that created the DAO framework, that created the code that really went wrong, right? And so to his credit, he didn't have his head in the sand. He was working for 24 hours. And then after that crazy period, he decided to have a public conversation about the whole mess with me. So we spent about an hour talking, and it really created a flame war on YouTube. This is by far the most people I've ever interacted with on a one-to-many basis, and this is the first time I've kind of experienced like really ruthless YouTube comments. Most of them were directed at Griff, but I think some people were hypothesizing that he wanted a softball interviewer, a friend to interview him. I don't think he was calling up Let's Talk Bitcoin, but it doesn't really matter because although I may not be the most hard-hitting interviewer, I did ask the proper questions, and did give him he got a chance to explain himself, and his explanations were, well, a lot of people had a lot of problems with the explanations that he gave, and it doesn't really matter that it went through me. Everyone kind of got the message, and there's been an ongoing, fascinating public discussion on what exactly happened and what should be done going forward. And we're going to talk more about that later on. But this counts as local news because we had our little interview right here at Ubud. And our little 15 minutes of fame, so to speak. It was also picked up by Let's Talk Bitcoin. They basically re-aired the interview on Let's Talk Bitcoin, and there were another, I think, 4,000 people that tuned in through this mechanism.
Branding, the filter. Branding.
And there's more comments, vitriolic and supportive, more vitriol than support, but you can see more conversation there. So that was quite exciting. Elsewhere in local news, we had movie night. We always have movie night on Monday night at Bali Bohemia. It's a great place to watch a movie, actually. They've got the upstairs there, and you can pull up a cushion, order some coconut water. And we had a controversial movie this time, Brexit the movie. We also showed, I wasn't sure what to show that would present the other side of this Brexit debate. But Brexit the movie is quite one-sided in terms of leaving the EU. But we showed a little clip from John Oliver. Where's John Oliver's clip? Last week tonight, who made a pretty, well, an equally biased representation of the other side of the argument. Do we have any Brits in the room? Anybody from Britain? Okay. Do you know that we're voting on Thursday? Do you have your absentee ballot? Yeah. Yes. And is it a topic of conversation in the UK as far as you can tell?
No, so everyone's talking about anything else on the agenda.
Nobody is talking about anything else. It is Brexit, Brexit, Brexit.
Yeah.
And where's the pendulum right now? Is it leaving or staying?
50-50, but more on leaving than traveling.
More on leaving. Oh, okay. So you're in the stay camp, and there's other people that are in the leave camp that are hanging around. It was really hard to find objective information on the topic. So I don't know. I guess.
Biggest one back now.
Swung back yesterday. Like the,
To stay.
The footsie jump, the pound jump.
The other event that happened last week, the MP being shot,
Yes, that
kind of
tipped the scales
changed
in a certain direction.
Yeah.
This whole thing is fascinating. I mean, I really think that the way we organize society is being questioned here. The European Union is a grand experiment that was moving in one direction, and that was to conglomerate the will of people in a larger geographic area, so that they could cooperate on things like labor laws and trade, and maintaining fishing grounds, and collaborating on global warming initiatives. And this represents a possible movement in the other direction. If you will, a decentralization of the political power within Europe. And does this mean that the European Union experiment failed? Can the British leave without harming the experiment irrevocably? What will happen? We don't know. But I think it's safe to say if the UK leaves the European Union this Thursday, it's going to be interesting. We're going to have stuff to talk about. If they stay, it's just going to be boring. So I mean, that's my whole calculus. I'm not a UK citizen. I just want more, salaciousness. Okay. All right. We shall see. We'll be watching with interest. All right. And of course, we've got our YouTube channel. Big news is YouTube gave us our own URL, and sadly, I don't have that pulled up here. But I will in future communications about the YouTube channel. I'll use our YouTube URL. This is a big deal. They only give you a URL when you have so many subscribers, and hopefully this means more people will tune in. But we'll see.
But 150 this week, yeah.
Yeah, because of that interview. Yeah.
Yay.
All right. So let us not forget, given all these world-changing things, that we've got our own little thing going on here in Bali, where we're trying to get a Bitcoin economy to take off. These are a selection of Bitcoin transactions from selected Bitcoin merchants around town. And this, by the way, was our last Bitcoin 101. And there's been kind of I would say fewer people spending their Bitcoin. And I'm just wondering, is it because the price is so volatile? Is it because the price has gone up and you guys are like kind of Ebenezer Scrooging with your Bitcoin, or did you just forget? we didn't have a 0 day though. We did have a 1 transaction day.
You gotta get Toko Bitcoin on here. You gotta get Listric
Okay.
on here.
All right,
It's gonna skew your numbers substantially.
I,
just between Mel and me and Deb.
yes, we got to get the Pulsa.
Yeah, we just bought some yesterday. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I am gonna put that on my list, on my to-do list, along with 10,000 other things. But anyway, I think that it's bumping right along. I don't think we're breaking any records, but I think there is active Bitcoin usage, which is good for where we are now. So, all right, let's take a look at the price. We are in Indonesia. Let's take a look at the largest Bitcoin exchange in Indonesia, bitcoin.co.id. And I have found that Bitcoins are quite expensive on the Indonesian exchange lately. Anybody know how many US dollars 9.6 million IDR is? I think it's 720. That would make sense. So the global average is 714, but on bitcoin.co.id, it's a little bit more expensive. And we've seen this in the past in both directions. Sometimes it's cheaper than the global average. Sometimes it's more expensive than the global average. There's a little bit of a lag time because the order book or the liquidity on the market is less. These guys traded 1,100 Bitcoins in the last 24 hours. Other exchanges do much larger volume, and thus are more in tune with the global price. So this represents an arbitrage opportunity. If you can buy Bitcoin in another exchange, you can make $6 or $7 per Bitcoin by selling them on the Indonesian exchange. So it's really interesting, I find, when that happens, because it illustrates the friction involved with the legacy banking system. Because if it was all crypto, there would never be any arbitrage opportunities because people would be writing bots to close any arbitrage gap as soon as it opened. But because we've got, people need to move real money into real exchanges in order to trade virtual currencies, we get these differences in the price. So the price here in Indonesia is even more dear than the global average. So maybe that's why people aren't going into Bali Bohemia and buying nasi goreng or kismet and getting their, what's good at kismet?
Coconut latte.
Coconut latte. Yeah, they're foregoing their coconut latte. That's a tragedy because the Bitcoins are so expensive here in Indonesia. Okay, so here's the US dollar price, $714.39 for one Bitcoin. You only get one Bitcoin for $714. Yep, only one. That's it, just one for $714. You used to get about 3 for that price, but the price has changed recently. Let's look at the what's been going on over the last week. This is the Bitcoin time machine. We were last week down below $700. We went as high as $774, and now we're back down here around the 700 mark. Any what do you guys think? Do you think this drop in price is related to the Ethereum controversy, to the DAO controversy?
Yes.
Or is this just another little bubble blip? Is it
But it
related
ain't
or not?
much, is it? When you consider how far we've come just this year, right? It's just
Well,
a little hiccup.
Yeah, I think there is very strong countervailing pressure towards a higher Bitcoin price. And this indeed could be reflective of a loss of faith in cryptocurrency itself, especially because there are presumably a lot of new investors in Bitcoin. Probably a lot of people aren't that familiar with cryptocurrencies, and they are new users, new investors. They see a headline in the New York Times, for example, which we're going to get to in a minute, then maybe they get a little scared and sell. But that's pure speculation on my part.
Gary,
Yes.
I've been wondering lately if it would be useful to look at the UN price, because it came up to 5,000 UN and just hovered above it, and it failed to hold that level.
Nothing matters besides US dollars. I mean, we hold the reserve currency. I mean, we kick ass.
Wow.
I mean, why do we want to look at
Wow.
anything besides USA?
Wow.
Join me. Okay. All right, good point. Okay, fine.
Bought all the Bitcoin in China, bought the flight to Vancouver, and they're unloading in Vancouver right now, and that's why the price is dropping. Right?
But that said,
Buy some
4,000 and 3,000 didn't pose
Any psychological barrier?
psychological barrier. Maybe 5,000 UN is
I think
more of the barrier.
we should do that. I think we should look at the renminbi Bitcoin split next time, and yeah, I think that's a great idea. Hi, welcome. Come on in.
Come on, yeah, get a chair, yeah.
All right. Here's the volatility figures. They are through the roof. This is Bitcoin volatility for the last 30 days and the last 60 days. We were getting accustomed to maybe breaking the 1% barrier, and now we're at the top of this spike here, right? But you can see historically that the spikes are getting lower and lower and lower. Bitcoin volatility is heading in one direction, and that is towards non-volatility. So even when we have a crazy few weeks like we've had recently, it's still not as bad as what we were seeing even during some of the heyday times of Bitcoin back in 2013. We've come a long way, and the only way that happens is if Bitcoin is spread out over a larger portion of the global economy. If more and more people are using Bitcoin, then the volatility presumably should go down, because fewer and fewer people have the ability to push the price around. More and more people are transacting in smaller and smaller amounts, and the economy, the pool is much larger and larger over time. That should make Bitcoin someday a very, very stable currency. I'm hoping that it's a currency that will price things, and things will remain the same price for my entire lifetime. So imagine if a pen costs $1 for your entire life. You could certainly cooperate better with your fellow human being if you knew the price and prices kept their stability. So that is the idea with Bitcoin, and hopefully this trend will continue. Even though there's a lot of ups and downs, if you were to draw a regression line through this graph, you'd be able to tell that the volatility is going down over time. This last week notwithstanding. All right, we've got the latest view on the total number of blocks and the block reward. Because the Bitcoin price is up, every 10 minutes there's $17,000 worth of new Bitcoin created. That's a lot of money every 10 minutes. That's a little bit more than I make every 10 minutes. And beware that when this figure reaches 420,000, this figure will be cut in half. Where's the Bitcoin clock? So every 210,000 blocks, the inflation rate for Bitcoin gets cut in half. And that is set to happen, looks like, on July 9th at 5 o'clock in the UK. So just in time to have a party if you're in London. I don't know what time that'll be here. That'll be the middle of the night. I would wake up for it. I still think you guys should have a halving party. But anyway, the Bitcoin ecosystem is anticipating this inflation rate cutting in half. It's very exciting, and it's just, well, less than 3,000 blocks from now. So hang on to your hats. Speaking of the blockchain, check this out. Because the price has gone up, the number of Bitcoin transactions has gone through the roof. Where's my Bitcoin transactions? Look at that. Bitcoin transactions are just going one direction. They're going skyward. And essentially what that means is that, here's a new record. When was that? Can somebody see that? Basically, that we are reaching new records in terms of transaction volume all the time.
Does transactions mean just like buys and sells, or also like purchases?
No, this means transactions on the blockchain itself. Okay. It doesn't reflect exchange activity. Here also is a real-time look at the blocks being created. And what's interesting about these are the last few blocks that have been made. You can see Ant Pool found one, KNC Miner found one, KNC Miner found another one, Ant Pool found another one. You can see that there are a few miners that are taking the lion's share of the new blocks. And every time they find one, they get that block reward, $17,000 worth of Bitcoin. You can also see, if you look, I don't know if you can see in yellow, the size of the block. We've talked about the block size in the past where it's only 1 megabyte. And these miners are creating blocks that are almost 1 megabyte. 998 kilobytes is almost 1 megabyte. And this one was 933. This one was 884. This one was 998. So we have full blocks. Every block is jammed with transactions. Has anybody had a delayed transaction in the last week or two? No.
No.
Interesting. I had a transaction that didn't clear for 3 days. And this depends on the fee that one attaches to the transaction they're trying to get through. It also depends on all the inputs to the transaction. So if there are a great deal of inputs, that means that the transaction is larger. And if you don't attach a high enough fee, then the miners will choose to clear other transactions before they clear yours. This blue line right here represents what's called the Mem Pool. This is how many transactions are waiting to be confirmed, right? So in each block, you can see they're putting in this block, they put in 2,000 transactions. In this block, they put in 800 transactions. In this block, they put in 2,000 transactions. But there are 4,900 transactions waiting to make it into the next block. So there is a significant number of transactions waiting to be cleared that will not make it into the next block. We've got a transaction backlog, and this is because of the size of the maximum size of the blocks that the Bitcoin blockchain will allow. So this is why if you had a transaction that didn't clear, it's because it's hanging out in this blue graph line here. It's a transaction that has a fee that isn't good enough to make it into the next block. Is that clear? Sandy?
Have you spoken to other people who had similar experiences?
In the past I have, but I haven't talked to anyone recently that had problems.
Okay, I just wonder, people who are going to be new to Bitcoin, experience that,
Yes.
should have some internal dialogue around that.
Yes. This is a poor user experience, possibly, and it's something to worry about. You know, there is a very loud cacophony of people screaming for larger blocks so that we can alleviate this pressure. You know, we've blown up the balloon as large as it will go. It's, you know, ready to burst, and we want to make the balloon larger, but that changes the economics for certain very interested parties in the equation. Let me show you why that might be.
But doubling the block size when they have the price next in July 9th.
Yeah, should we phone that one in?
Okay.
Should we tell them the professor said?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Check this out, guys. This is the miner revenue. Look at this.
Okay, whoops.
Why is that thing going so high? This is defined in U.S. dollars, by the way.
Wow, that's just
So
a year.
part of this is because the price of Bitcoin has gone up, right? Because this is defined in U.S. dollars, but also because all of those blocks are almost totally jammed, people are upping their fees, right? They're attaching a larger fee to their transactions. So miners are making more. Now, keep in mind that when the Bitcoin halving happens, their block reward is going to be cut in half. So every 10 minutes, you know, they were making $17,000 every 10 minutes. At a certain point in July, they're going to be making, what's half of 17? 8.5. Thank you, Professor. My math skills, my on-the-spot math skills are not good. So, yes, presumably the miners, if they're smart, they know this thing is coming, and they're saving all this extra money so that they don't go bankrupt when the halving happens. But we shall see what happens in reality.
Could this be potentially a major turning point for Bitcoin?
It is a major event. We have done it once before, so and done it successfully. The circumstances are a little bit different this time around. There is a doomsday scenario where if miners aren't profitable and they pull their hashing power out of the network, we could never find another block because we can never match the hashing power that's designated for that period. So, well, it'll be interesting to see what happens, and nobody really knows. And doesn't that make it exciting?
Are any of the proposed solutions for the pending transactions problem actually being? I mean, are any of those solutions actually valid or kind of being?
There's lots of proposed solutions. There are people that want to raise the block size. There's also people that want to move transactions off of the main chain with side chains. There's the Lightning Network. There's also this thing called segregated witness that will remove the amount of information that you need to put into every transaction. Thus the segregated witness. But none of them are alive and running and relieving the pressure yet. So we are running at the red line, and really those solutions won't be implemented, I think, for a little while yet. And they need to be tested, and they,
Need agreement.
it's a process.
Who was the vote on what the code exchange?
When the code, well, the miners can choose which code they run, so they really hold the keys to the castle. But no single miner holds the keys to the castle. They have to come to some sort of an agreement, and they have not been able to come to an agreement thus far.
But we can vote through nodes, is that right? I mean,
you can indicate your preference, but eventually it comes down to miners clearing transactions and making blocks, and they can decide when they find a block, they can decide what transactions go into the block, and they can actually decide how big they make their block, right? So it at the end of the day, it does depend on the miners. Okay, I don't know why this keeps happening. Sorry guys, technical difficulties. All right, let's go around the world a little bit. Oh wait, wasn't there one more thing? All right, why not? Why not go around the world now? Let's first stop in Venezuela. How many people have been paying attention to what's going on in Venezuela? All right, not everybody. So Venezuela is a largely petroleum-based economy. They have kind of a very left approach to government. Some would call it the socialist, communist. You know, basically they depend on the state for a lot of what they have. They were the richest country in Central America, if not South America as well, because of their natural resources. They've got the largest oil reserves besides Saudi Arabia on planet Earth. And yet people have empty refrigerators. This is largely due to the drop in the price of oil, right? The price of oil has gone through the basement, and therefore the state cannot make as much money as they used to by exporting oil. And this is having a really damaging effect on the Venezuelan people. They're used to getting their food and their things from the government itself, and now the government's not able to provide these things. And it's a real problem. I mean, there's people that they're kind of bum rushing the supermarkets. They're arresting people for hoarding food. It's just a real mess. And I think it's a real lesson for any political entity that relies on natural resources for their bread and butter, because you're at the whim of the global market for whatever commodity pays the bills. And we see that again in our next example, Nigeria. Nigeria is also a very oil-rich, petroleum-rich place. And check this out. They have depegged their currency. Now, what does that mean? We live in a world of where we have the exchange rate mechanism, right? Where currencies float against one another in order to indicate the relative value of that political space that the money represents. But governments and central banks within those countries manipulate the exchange rate for the benefit of their people, right? They've got central bankers that have monetary and fiscal policy that is designed to benefit the people that live in that country. But when they get it wrong, it's an absolute disaster. And that's what we have here. What's the date on this? June 20th. This just happened. Here's the Nigerian Naira. Anyone know how to pronounce that? Naira. This looks pretty crazy, but check it out. It's extremely crazy in the context of what used to be happening. Look at this. The government was actively interceding on behalf of the currency in order to keep it at this level. And as soon as they let the free market decide what the value was, check it out. It went from 195 per US dollar to 275 per US dollar, and it looks like that's where it is. So imagine if you lived in this country. Imagine if you were planning a vacation to the United States. We'll use the United States because this is the Naira USD cross. Your vacation just doubled in price. All of the things that your country uses that come from America doubled in price. This is awful. If you have dollar-denominated debt, you're totally screwed, because you're now, everything you earn, if you're earning your money inside this country and you've got debt denominated in dollars, you're screwed. This is what happened with the Asian contagion back in 1997. The Thai baht did something similar. They depegged their currency, and everybody who had debts denominated in the wrong currency went belly up, not because they were poor business people, but because the geopolitical milieu that they found themselves in did not favor them. And I think a lot of companies are a lot more sophisticated now. They hedge these things, but you know, it just makes for a very sad situation. You know, there's a lot of people in this country that are going to suffer tremendously because this happened, and it's, you know, they're just normal people. They're going about their day, having their jobs, you know, loving their families, sending their kids off to school, and all of a sudden their currency is worth half as much. Imagine it.
I mean, in China, you know, for years and years, the Chinese government kept itself from depegging its currency because it knew that it was having about 8 renminbi to $1 was very advantageous to China and the government. And there was world pressure. Hey, you guys, your trade surplus is too high against everybody else in the world. You gotta come down. You gotta come down. And it wasn't until, you know, international pressure mounted that they finally were forced to devalue against the dollar, and then it went down from 8 to like 6-ish.
Yes, they've been devaluing quite aggressively recently over the past year. There have been several surprises from China, and what's going on here is the governments are suspending reality. The market is reality, right? The market determines the supply and demand for a currency is reflective in the market demands for the currency. And governments, through their intercession, make it so the common people cannot see what the real value of their currency was. You know, the real value, you know, back here was not 195, but nobody knew it because there was intervention. There was manipulation going on. And then when the market finally had its way, we discovered what the true value of this currency is. And because it happened in a chaotic fashion, everybody loses out, right? There could have been a bumpy line, a bumpy market-driven line from back here to here, where people could plan a little bit. You know, they could see the trend. They could see that their currency is losing value and take action to protect themselves. But if you have a central bank model where central banks are interfering with the market forces, then when the market exerts itself, when Mother Nature comes along and just blows everything away, people suffer. And it's unnecessary suffering, in my opinion, right? And why do we talk about this? Because Bitcoin works on a set of rules that everybody can understand. The inflation rate, for example, is known, right? The number of coins outstanding is known, and there is always a 24/7 market for Bitcoin all over the world. So there are no price surprises for Bitcoin. The Bitcoin price always reflects the market, at least for now. There are ways in the future that people might try and make Bitcoin like the old system, but for now, the price of Bitcoin is dictated by the market. There are no surprises. There's some wild swings, but those are based on market forces, not on the capricious nature of a decision by some central bank. All right, I digress. End of rant. Let's talk about the Dow, shall we? We got about 20 minutes left, and I really want you guys to participate. You know, when I first talked with Griff, I didn't fully understand this cartoon, but I think now I do. Ethereum, how many people know what Ethereum is? Everybody in here familiar with Ethereum? Ethereum is a competitor to Bitcoin. It's got a Turing-complete programming language attached, and its goal is to replace the legal system with smart contracts, right? Wouldn't it be nice if a legal contract was written in code? It would be totally unambiguous. The code is the contract. That's the proposal underway with Ethereum. And Ethereum has the ability to execute these contracts. It is designed to be unstoppable in the same way that Bitcoin is unstoppable by using a immutable, totally secure blockchain backed by a token of value. In the case of Ethereum, it's ETH or Ether. And so Ethereum is trying to build a platform for unstoppable applications. And the flagship implementation of just such a smart contract or application is the DAO. And the DAO has egg on its face. The DAO has failed. Does this mean that Ethereum has failed? Does this mean that the DAO is just a bump in the road, a failed experiment, if you will? This is the question that the people behind Ethereum have at the tip of their tongue. They're trying to make this decision, just like, I guess this would be Vitalik Buterin. No, actually, this would be the miners. So just like Bitcoin, Ethereum has miners, and the miners decide what code runs on that Turing complete computer in the sky that is the Ethereum network. And they've got a paradoxical decision to make. Are they building unstoppable applications, or are they building useful smart contracts that don't rob people of $150 million? Right. That is the question. And why did all these?
You tried reloading them?
Yeah, I'm reloading, but I'm having to do it on an ad hoc basis. All right, so here's the New York Times. Where's all my highlights? Sorry, guys. There they are. Okay. A hacking of more than 50 million dashes hopes in the world of virtual currency. A hacker on Friday siphoned more than 50 million of digital money away from the experimental virtual currency project, that would be the DAO, that has been billed as the most successful crowdfunding venture ever, taking with him not just a third of the venture's money, but also the hopes and dreams of thousands of participants who wanted to prove the safety and security of digital currency. So here's the mainstream narrative. The safety and security of digital currency is being called into question by the failure of this thing called the DAO. This would explain why there's a drop in the price of Bitcoin. They are conflating this thing with all digital currency that's out there. The attack most likely puts an end to the project known as the DAO, Decentralized Autonomous Organization, which had raised $160 million in the form of Ether. And so here we are. We got the New York Times. This guy is a researcher that was really jumping up and down, saying that there was a problem in the first place. Oh, one more little jibe from the mainstream media. Just last week, Janet Yellen, the Federal Reserve Chairman, told central bankers at a trade industry conference they should accelerate their efforts to look at blockchain. But here we are falling on our face. The DAO is being attacked. Griff Green, a community organizer with the company, wrote on the project software Slockit. Slockit is the company that wrote the DAO framework. Quote, "This is not a drill." So Griff Green is getting his 15 minutes of fame. Where's his picture? It's not here. It used to be here. This is the COO of Slockit, also instrumental in the creation of the DAO framework. Stephen Tual, he is a prominent player in the whole chaos. Interesting that this made it into the story. Programmers with Slockit wrote the code for the DAO, but said they had no formal continuing role with the project. This has entered the domain of real legality. And I think people are trying to CYA. What does CYA stand for? Cover your apples.
Yeah.
It's interesting that that this isn't a quote. This is just something that the author of the article chose to put in there. So I thought that was quite interesting. There's our man Griff Green. The DAO's journey is over, Mr. Tual said in an email Friday. This thing is done. It remains to be seen how forgiving the community will be with both Griff and with Stephen Tual. But the name of tonight's episode is "Every Little Thing's Going to Be All Right." I think it probably looks really bleak for these guys right now, but you can't really do something awesome unless you take some big risks. And granted, these guys made some mistakes, but there's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking going on. They did something that captured the excitement of a lot of people, and that takes a lot of work in itself. And we bear some of the blame because we chose to get involved. I mean, I don't know how many people in the room hold some DAO tokens. I have a little bit. Some of my friends have a little bit. And when we bought those DAO tokens, we had access to the code, just like the attacker had, right? And in the terms and conditions of the DAO, it said explicitly that despite what we've said in the white paper, despite what we've said in podcasts or when we've been talking, the final word is the code itself. The code is the contract, so to speak. And, well, now we're all having to live with that, well, that very grim decision to live or die by the code, right? And actually, that's what's causing all the controversy right now. Is these guys really don't want to live by the code, right? They want to do revisionist history. They want to bail out the DAO investors, and a lot of people are saying, "What? Too big to fail?" Like,
So you mean that they cannot change the code, or you mean that the final word is the code after they have taken all decisions?
well, they said a priori the code is the contract.
But they can change it.
Well, they can't change it after the fact, after that code has been executed to the benefit of the attacker.
So once they release the code, it's set in stone, basically.
Basically, yeah. Although they're talking about introducing a soft fork that they've already actually implemented, which has frozen the DAO, the funds that are in any DAO with the same bytecode that the DAO has. So if this raises all kinds of implications itself, right? But it has stemmed the bleeding, but has not stopped all the controversy, because yes, they've introduced a soft fork that freezes all the ether that's associated with the DAO, but also any other DAO that has the same bytecode as the DAO. And I don't mean to get too technical, but if you downloaded the DAO yourself and you were like, I'm going to create my own DAO, and it had the same bytecode that the DAO had, then your funds are also frozen, right? And you had nothing to do with this exploit and this malicious movement of funds
So you can create
yourself.
a DAO without using any of the code of the DAO.
Right. And those right now are not blacklisted, and that's another loaded word that's being thrown about. But actually, they've introduced this soft fork that effectively blacklists any DAO that has the bytecode signature of the DAO, right? And that's to buy themselves some time to figure out what they're going to do. But it's already stepping on the toes of the spirit of the DAO. Anyone know what the A stands for in DAO? Autonomous. Right, and it turns out that it's, it was autonomous. It autonomously sent out $50 million to this quote-unquote attacker. But if the code is the contract, is this guy even an attacker? Is this guy a hacker? Is this guy in the wrong? I mean, he read the fine print of the contract, which was the code, and he exercised. According to him, he found a feature that he liked very much. And let me see if I can find the.
Yeah, that's not verified.
Let me. I think this is worth reading, because this is gold right here. This is supposedly from the attacker, and there's a lot of speculation on whether it is him or it is not him, but it doesn't really matter, because the points he makes are very poignant. I have carefully examined the code of the DAO and decided to participate after finding a feature where splitting is rewarded with additional ether. I have made use of this feature and have rightfully claimed 3,641,000 ether, and would like to thank the DAO for this reward. It is my understanding that the DAO code contains this feature to promote decentralization and encourage the creation of child DAOs. And I'll just go on, I'll skip a little bit, but he invokes the terms and conditions of the DAO itself. The terms of the DAO creation are set forth in the smart contract code existing on the Ethereum blockchain at blah, 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 blah. Nothing in this explanation of terms or in any other document or communication may modify or add any additional obligations or guarantees beyond those set forth in the DAO's code. Any and all explanatory terms or descriptions are merely offered for educational purposes and do not supersede or modify the express terms of the DAO code set forth on the blockchain. So he is basically saying, the code is the contract, and I found a feature in the contract that I really like, and I exercise my right as a holder of the DAO to pay myself. Comments?
Okay, I know that this is speaking after the fact, but I mean, in software engineering, one of the rules that basically, one of the rules that are basically taken for granted is that you assume that the code will change. I mean, you cannot you cannot rely 100% of the code, no matter how carefully you have written it. So, I mean,
Well-
I know that this is speaking after the fact, but I mean,
Mhm.
we should have.
Well,
been
I think
smarter.
that's a point well taken. I know that you are a programmer, so
Yeah.
you would know. And what will this do to the aspiring smart contract author? You know, how many programmers are out there saying, "I really love this idea of a smart contract. I think I'll take that up as a career." What kind of fiduciary responsibility do those contract writers have to their clients? And will programmers really want to get into the game of writing smart contracts if something like this can happen to the code they wrote? I'll remind you guys that the code of the DAO was reviewed extensively by the smartest known people in the space. Obviously, there was at least one guy smarter.
How many lawyers reviewed the writing of the contract?
Well,
That's the difference. You got software guys writing.
that's a great point. That's a great point. In fact, there was a. Why are all these blank? That's such a bummer. There was a. There it is. This guy, Andreas Antonopoulos, held a 2-hour powwow with some very smart actual lawyers that are familiar with cryptocurrency. This is a great educational piece if you've got 2 hours to give to it. And it talks really about the missteps that they made with regard to protecting themselves with real law, right?
I think there's the argument that, hey, the Ethereum network, the platform, it's still in beta right now. It's not technically fully released yet.
Ethereum itself is in beta.
So
The frontier release is quote beta code. Yeah.
So there is the argument that I don't necessarily agree, but there is the argument that there is potential to go back to whether soft fork, hard fork.
I thought that ended with the frontier release. They had a release before that where it was common knowledge that they could rewrite the blockchain if something disastrous happened, and that one of the milestones for this frontier release of Ethereum is that they were going to kind of set it free.
I think in this case people are still.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm necessarily agree with it, but
Yeah.
That wasn't disclosed up front when people put $150 million into it. But chucking money as a DAO, oh, don't worry, if anything fucks up, we'll rewind it. I don't think that was the explicit intention of putting money into it.
Well,
I think that argument's invalid, personally.
well, and it turns out that they are still talking about exercising that very possibility. You know, they will need to get the buy-in from the miners, but you know, the miners are a little bit hamstrung if they don't go along with what the developers want, because there's only one other significant implementation of Ethereum, right? And you need a diversified body of implementations of the Ethereum standard in order to deviate from what the developers tell you what to do. Because if you decide not to take the fork that the developers give you, and the developers start revising code based on this new code base that they've got, then you as a miner are screwed unless you've got another implementation to go to. So there's still a lot of power with the developers, with Vitalik Buterin, to influence these miners to do what they want. Now, what choice will they make? You know, remember our cartoon. This is a great thing. You guys should all listen to this if you're really into this topic. But this is the problem, right? You can save these people. You know, people put faith in Ethereum when they invested in the DAO. The DAO was the flagship implementation of what Ethereum can do, and I think they see the failure of the DAO posing an existential threat to Ethereum. But if Ethereum revises its own blockchain in order to make all of these DAO holders whole, then do they also shoot themselves in the foot because people are like, well, I thought this was an immutable blockchain. I thought we were giving our power away to an open system that everybody can predict how it's going to act. Are you telling me that if somebody doesn't like something that they can just go in and change it? That's not what I signed up for. Does that then call into question the viability of Ethereum and set the whole concept of smart contracts back to 2013 when we were just talking about them.
It's like a circular argument in intent, isn't it? You do
It
it
is,
one
it's
way
a-
and you're screwed, you do it the other way and
It's a
you're
paradox.
screwed.
So
And one's a failure of the code to bring integrity to the intent of what the code is trying to do.
yes,
Yeah, the code has tried to put a context that honors those people that put 150 million in. I was one of them, not putting that amount of money, obviously. But there are a lot of people putting in with the intention of what the framework stood for. So that intention was there. You hope that the code codifies it, but it has like a loophole, like a bug, and you can never prove that code works. You can only prove that it's broken, speaking as a programmer, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, that's the dilemma, it seems to me. And you honor the ethics or what the intention is, and you break the foundation agreement that was based on.
right. With any paradox, if there's a paradox on one level, the solution exists at some higher level above the paradox, right? And so for me, trying to map that onto this crazy mess, Ethereum is trying to build unstoppable applications and thus must abide the DAO debacle. I don't think that Ethereum can remain true to its principles without letting the DAO crash and burn and let everybody learn their lesson. I don't know what exactly will happen, but for me and for Ethereum to maintain its esteem in my eyes, it would have to act in this way. There was no problem with the Ethereum virtual machine. The Ethereum virtual machine has run and done exactly what it was supposed to do. And for them to go in and say, well, it did what it was supposed to do, but we don't really like how that worked out, so we're gonna make our buddies whole again. The critique is that we've just reverted back to the old system. We're too big to fail, and where bailouts live. And this is the world that we're trying to leave, right? We're trying to let the chips fall where they may. Give the arbiter function to the computer and let the chips fall where they may. And in this case, we proved that we couldn't write a rock-solid smart contract, and we have to revise. I don't think that the smart contract is dead, but the process by which we create smart contracts needs a lot of work, especially when you've got the power to create something as complicated as the DAO. You can have some extremely intelligent people that just can't find every loophole, and here we are. Anybody disagree, especially DAO holders out there? Or
I
comments?
disagree, but that's not what I was gonna say. I mean,
Yeah.
I agree with you in principle.
Uh-huh.
But they only 50 million went. There's still 100, so it's not really dead. I mean, they could release it, turn the lights back on, and just take the loss. It's not. We still have our DAOs in our wallet. They're just worth less Ethereum, but most people bought them at the sale price, during the sale anyway. So we're not necessarily in a loss position.
Well, okay, so
There are some people who are.
here's another very interesting nuance to the question, though, because in order to do that, in order to stop the bleeding, they had to introduce a soft fork that effectively blacklists any bytecode with the DAO's signature. So we've introduced a very interesting concept to the whole world of smart contracts and cryptocurrencies. What's going to happen when a smart contract is doing something that a government doesn't like, or can they go in and blacklist bytecode at will? And what kind of world is that when you've got that kind of censorship possibility?
Okay, I'm not familiar.
Very similar to the one we have.
I'm not very familiar with Ethereum, but I'm not very familiar with Ethereum, so I'm just guessing here. Is it possible that they could have done it because the processing power is not as big as Bitcoin, for example? I mean, it's just because it's still in the data and there are only a few miners, so they couldn't do it.
Well, I don't think they can overcome the hashing power themselves. They will have to get the miners on board with whatever they decide. But they, like I explained before, they've got a lot of power with miners to influence what they do.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, if something like this happened, let's say with Bitcoin, I mean, it would have been almost impossible to do that soft fork.
Well, it did happen with Bitcoin in the first 6 months or within the first year. There was a bug and they had to do a soft fork. Someone managed to basically send a negative number, so it did an overflow, and they ended up with like billions of Bitcoins, and they did a fork. So
Yes.
in the early days, these things kind of are more common while they're sort of smoothing.
Right.
through.
But
Yeah,
I
but I think at the time,
Yeah.
Bitcoin may not have had a real value at
yeah, it was,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
It
the
was a
crazy
very
thing about
interesting-
this is the value that people put into it,
Right.
given how young it is.
And so a more apt analogy is Mt. Gox, because in Mt. Gox, you know, everybody trusted Mt. Gox, a company, so to speak. And well, actually, in reality, Mt. Gox was a company. People trusted them with their Bitcoin, and they acted irresponsibly. In their case, somebody absconded with the Bitcoins.
Some guy that was
But it-
trading Magic the Gathering. You know.
But it's similar because the DAO did something equally not in the interest of its stakeholders, and Bitcoin at that point was not able to reverse the blockchain to go find people's Bitcoins that disappeared in Mt. Gox and return them to them. It was not an option. I mean, I suppose they could have proposed a similar hard fork for Bitcoin at that time, but it was not possible.
30-day wait, like you've got with the DAO, that maybe they would have been able to do something, but this 30-day wait, I think, makes a significant difference in the ability to stop it.
Yeah, I
And-
mean,
and yeah, I mean, Ethereum now has a generic blacklist function now, which
Because of this
miners
soft
have
fork.
voted to stop the DAO. They have voted to stop it,
yes.
and Ethereum, supports blacklisting as part of the product now.
But that's the concern, really.
Mm.
Like, I put money into it, and I mean, because I believed in the concept of what is possible, and without any intention to go and look at code and see if I can figure out the flaws myself. That's not what I'm for. I'm interested in that.
Yeah.
But I would rather see that money go down the tubes that I had, which was $500 for me, than have what's sacred in concept, a new philosophy that's very different from the banks. If I wanted the bank's philosophy and bailouts, I'd be putting my money in traditional investments and letting them do all their dishonest shit behind the scenes and political maneuvers. I'm interested in a new concept. And I guess if something's going to fall flat on its face because the testing wasn't thorough enough, so be it. The development team, the testing teams of the world, all the PricewaterhouseCoopers, all the people, whatever, there were whole bunches of people who were paid to look at that stuff. Then finally they missed it. Every good team can miss stuff. But I think this breathing space to consider after a month what to do with it is violating the concept of, it opens it up for any government, like you're saying. So I think the sacred, the concepts are more important than the money that's going into it, frankly.
I don't think it opens it up that much to governments, because at the end of the day, the miners can go through Tor network. It would slow down the block propagation, so I don't know if they would do that. But they could. There are ways they could mine anonymously, but it might have a cost that they're not willing to take. So yeah, no, actually, I take back. Governments could influence miners. Actually.
Right.
And government's just one example, right? It could be all sorts of
And so with this soft fork that was done in haste, I mean, this was done in an emergency situation. Have they jumped the shark? Does anyone know what jumped the shark?
Yeah.
No.
I mean, have they sold out, so to speak, in order to, have they
They have.
bitten their nose to spite their face?
No, I agree. They shouldn't have given the option for blacklist. They should have let the hacker get away with the money because he read the I mean, yes, obviously most people aren't technically capable of reading contracts, so most people rely on experts to tell them is the contract sound. But there was a lack of experts, really, perhaps, to say this contract sound. There was no one really looking at the code like they should have done because the code is the contract.
So the hacker wasn't able to cash in on the
No, he's not able. He doesn't have cash in hand yet.
Okay.
But
I don't even like calling him hacker. I mean, he really just used the features that were described in there. So to call that a hacker, I'm really struggling with that one.
can we call him a douchebag? I mean, I think he is a douchebag.
Well, we can talk about his intention. Yeah, his
Yeah, he is a
intention
jerk. I mean, he could have said, "Hey, I found this thing."
Wasn't
Exactly.
that the case?
Well, yeah.
Wasn't it raised to them beforehand? Hey, you guys,
Yeah. Let me.
Let me.
Let me.
Yep.
Let me.
And that is
That
a
morning.
check this out.
I mean, he could
This
always
is-
hand it back to people if he wasn't trying to be a douchebag.
This is Stephen Tual, the COO of Slockit, and very instrumental here. This is a tweet after the fact. Such and such user was aware of the exploit but didn't inform the DAO security group he joined. And you can't read this, but basically it's a guy saying, "Hey, I think I found a way to drain the DAO," and here he explicitly states the exploit that was used.
So what's
What, before or after?
And this exchange happened before this whole thing fell apart.
So how did they block? What did they block?
Oh,
About a month
they
ago.
blocked a part of the blockchain that belongs to the DAO. So the DAO can
Well,
say,
anyone
"I
who
do this."
anyone who implemented that DAO code.
Sure.
Right. So if I created my, Gary DAO with the same bytecode and I put, $1,000 worth of ether into it, my ether is also frozen by that soft fork.
that's not the main point here, is it?
No, but
Well,
my point is that you could look at the ownership of the bytecode, and then you can say to the DAO, please, Ethereum, can you block this because we want this? And
Well,
then you're
that is
because nobody else is influenced by this.
right. That is in effect what happened. They
Yeah.
went to the miners and they said, do not execute the code for this contract.
So we're good.
The DAO holders are good. The bigger question is the ecosystem good?
Yeah, because they're not affected by it.
Well, they are.
Well,
If the DAO asked for it,
they're not affected monetarily, but all these things rely on faith in the integrity of the system itself.
yeah, but what integrity is gone because it is the bytecode is the part of the DAO itself. So and nobody else is affected. So the integrity is still intact.
Well, they're operating based on a consensus mechanism that is outside of the Ethereum and DAO system. They've taken human intervention.
Yeah.
They've done things that were not known prior to the execution of that code. So they're revising history, which is
Fundamentally changing what Ethereum was supposed to do.
yes,
And they're
that's the
impacting
point.
some other people who actually shouldn't be in that.
I
blacklist.
agree. They can make DAO holders whole, but in so doing, are they breaking their fundamental goal?
If
their
it
larger goal?
was affecting other people, it would, but it doesn't because it's only the bytecode of the DAO itself that is affected. And this is a big, major thing because you're not really affecting anybody else.
They're freezing an account though, which is what people were hoping that Ethereum wouldn't have
But it's the
this
DAO's
collaboration.
But
to do
it's from
that.
the DAO.
And this is human adjudication, right?
Yeah,
the whole
yeah.
the whole point is that you're trying to replace the legal system with code because it's unambiguous. Well, it has unambiguously executed code that's against humans, and humans want to step back in and say, wait, we do need a human adjudication system. Well, we already have one. We've had one since the Magna Carta, and
It's
But
Do we-
it's still essentially one CPU, one vote, though, which is what Bitcoin is still based on. Like ultimately, the miners, which can be any one of us, are the voters as to what is
and can
blocked.
decide.
So it's not, in that sense, they're just enabling a vote by
Mhm.
putting that blacklist feature in there.
Yeah.
Which anyone could have done anyway. Anyone could have added that code themselves if they were good enough, and they haven't actually changed the protocol. They've just made it easier for people to vote with their CPUs, which Bitcoin is also.
That's a good point. That's a
What
good
do
point.
Can you
what
go
would be
back to
the-
what you were saying here, though, with this 3-day? Because you were saying that was shooting off on another topic, really, which is saying this was discussed before
Well, I think
the thing started happening.
yeah, I think one criticism you could level against the people who created the DAO was they didn't allow enough time to figure everything out. They didn't allow enough time to vet the code that was there. And you did have examples where, you got the whole world looking at this code before it was deployed, and someone said something, but it just got lost in the fray. It just got lost in all of the noise. And we go and find this after the fact, and it's kind of like,
A tester found something like
Yes.
3 days. It
And
went
so-
out into the world. And
Didn't they come out though? They come out. Didn't Stephen Tao come out and tweet that everything's fine?
he did a couple days before the DAO failed.
That's
Yes.
really arrogant.
Yeah, that's the criticism they're getting, is that there's too much hubris, too much, and not enough apologies. Was the main upshot from the aftermath of my interview with Griff. Was he was too flip. He didn't even apologize. They're the same assessment of Stephen Tual, where they're saying that there wasn't enough contrition. But
if they what would in simple terms, what would the consequences be if they closed the DAO? What would the consequences to investors and maybe a couple of the other players?
Well, Renee and Kamaya and myself would lose a little bit of dough.
You lose direct investors.
Yep, and some people put in large amounts of money, which was not a good idea. I mean, there's people. We're going to learn something whether we like it or not through this whole thing. But yeah, it's just money. I mean, people will lose money.
I can recall somebody very loudly saying, "Be cautious."
I reiterated about 5 times.
Yes,
it's an experiment.
indeed.
It's an experiment. It's an experiment.
Yes.
I was there.
Let it go.
Yes.
What about beyond that? Beyond actual people losing direct money, what would the ripple effect?
Well, I mean, your average programmer is going to think twice before he writes a smart contract and puts his name on it. There's that kind of fallout. If they end up hard forking Ethereum and changing history as Ethereum recorded it, then that could be fallout for the Ethereum project itself.
Ethereum could die.
Yeah.
I don't think it will.
And it would go to a different project. Someone else who did have the right
Anything
code
could
and the
die.
right
Bitcoin could
credibility
die.
would take over Ethereum. It's like,
The next iteration of it, but it could die in its current form in 27 days.
all that.
We live in an evolutionary environment for these things, and death is a part of evolution, and the stronger genes will survive and reproduce. Guys, we're basically out of time, but I mean, I'm just amazed at all the smart people we end up having in this room. It's always a great conversation, and we did have people ringing the bell that this could be a problem before. In this very room, we had people ringing the bell that this was experimental. People can listen to people like Blair and people like Steven and get an educated view on this world we're living in. It's fun to watch. Sometimes we bump our head, but we've got a good room here to discuss things. And I think that's a precious thing. And I thank you guys for coming tonight. You could have been out drinking beer and eating pizza, but instead you're here changing the world. Kudos to you. And we will continue our Tuesday night meetings, although I am going to be traveling for the next few weeks. I'll be back soon enough, but we will continue the consistency of these Tuesday night meetings. The information on that will be in the Facebook group. And so I can safely say we will see you again next Tuesday night, same time, right here at Hubud. Thanks for coming tonight, guys. We'll see you then.
Gary, congratulations on the 90th filter.
On the 90th. 90 of these suckers.